going on, guys? We're gonna switch it up a little bit today and talk about Flesh and Blood, which is funny because I think that's like the most boxes I have on my back wall is Flesh and Blood. But if you don't know, it's like the 5-year anniversary. It was like in October. So October 2019 is when they started, and let's just talk about where we're at today, how they're doing, what the future's looking like. And I kind of just wanted to make a video about them. I know it's long overdue. I've been talking about that I'd make one, so we're doing it now. I thought it'd be fun to give you guys like an idea of how. I just want to give you guys an idea because this is about to give you an idea when I came into the hobby. Was in about 2021, somewhere around there. Late 2020 is like when I was starting to, I slowly kind of progressed in, right? I started with just buying vintage Pokemon again, stuff like that. But I'll tell you this. I'll tell you a story. I remember watching one of my first Rudy videos. And he was opening, I believe it was a box of Uprising, I want to say. Like, Uprising had just come out. And I didn't really understand Flesh and Blood. I didn't even know it was a thing really yet. I was still like I was just now learning about Magic, right? So like I knew about Pokemon. I obviously knew about Magic, but I was learning about Magic. I didn't know any of the set names, anything. I don't even know about set or draft at this point. And so he's opening a box of Uprising, and he's talking about Marvels. So I'm literally watching this video, and I think that he's opening a Magic the Gathering booster box called Flesh and Blood Uprising, and that it has like Marvel characters in it as like these chase cards. Like it just has random Marvel characters in it, like Captain America. So just to show you how much of a Timmy I was, that's literally a thought that went through my brain, that's what I thought I was watching. And then when he like hit a Marvel and it was anyway, so yeah. So also I was cleaning up and I found these two random things, and I thought maybe you guys would think they were funny. This is, at the time I bought it, and it probably isn't anymore, or it may still be since most people don't grade with PSA. This is a PSA 10 Revel in Runeblood that I got on eBay for like $25, like at least like a year and a half ago, randomly. I don't think it's still the only PSA 10, but it'd be funny if it was. And then this is a PSA 10, what is this? The Stalagmite Bastion of Isenloft? I don't know, someone tell me how dumb I am. But this I picked up like 2 years ago for like not 2 years ago, it was like a year and a half. But for like $75. So, these are the only graded Flesh and Blood cards I have. So, I don't know if they're probably not really worth it. This one's starting to go up in price, which I think is funny, which is kind of where I'm going to start with. So, how I got exposed to Flesh and Blood was selling singles, and to this day still. If you want to like get into TCG business, or you just want to sell singles, even if you know nothing about Flesh and Blood, just go buy like cases of Flesh and Blood, and I promise you, you could literally just start a business selling Flesh and Blood singles. The singles are extremely strong because, again, like Magic, it's based off the playability of the cards, right? There's also obviously these huge hit chase cards, which is what I kind of wanted to hit on today. What I think Flesh and Blood has really done a good job of tapping into, and what they've kind of course corrected over the years, right, is making sure that playable cards stay at a decent price, right? Like they don't like basic non-foil standard versions of cards most of the time, besides like a few, like maybe like if the helm, whatever, the cloak, the helm. Like, I mean, I don't even like know the names off the top of my head. Findel's cloak or whatever, and then the what other helm. Like non-foil versions at most like $90 to $100, right? So they've done a good job at keeping, and you can play those cards basically like in any deck, and you only need really like one of them, right? Because they're like equipment pieces. So they've done a really good job at keeping most playable cards in that like $30, $40, $50 range at like, and that's like the super high ones, right? Now then though, they have special treatment cards, which these cards can go for, you know, 1,000 plus, right? So I think they're finally kind of starting to get that perfect little balance of keeping playable cards in a good range, not making them too ridiculous, but then also still giving collectors and investors something to kind of chase. In my personal opinion, out of Magic, Pokemon, Flesh and Blood is the most profitable box to like open on scale, from what I've seen personally. Now I'm sure like at one point like that can sway. Like I know like Magic used to be a big thing, and you can still kind of crack Magic, but I feel like it's not like what it used to be with Flesh and Blood. You can get a card that'll pay for the whole case, plus, you know, another, you know, double that in just the playable cards, even if they're not foil, right? So I think it's in a healthy spot, right? There's really no kind of, oh, well, why are these boxes this much if the cards are worthless, right? The cards aren't worthless. And in fact, the card prices are what are driving the box prices, right? So right now, it's funny, you definitely, Flesh and Blood is one of those things, like for example, Pokemon, don't open booster boxes, keep them sealed, you're going to do amazing. Flesh and Blood, it's been the exact opposite. It's like crack all your boxes, they're worth it, right? So eventually that scale should tip eventually, right? And we're kind of starting to see it with the older product. The problem is they printed a lot of it, but it's only been 5 years, right? So like again, maybe they just knew like it's just like the right attrition rate, and it's ticking down. But like, okay, so here's a box I want to talk about. Sorry, I'm kind of hopping all over the place. But a box that really catches my eye every time I look at it, and it's almost like my real kind of to figure out where things are at, and that's the Monarch first edition boxes. Those were like the most toxic asset of Flesh and Blood, right? So right now, first edition boxes are bouncing basically between like 55, 65, 70, but basically 55, 65. And I can't think, like, to give you an idea, right? Like, I never was in there when they were going for whatever, like the $300, $400, $500, whatever. But I know about it, right? Like, I know that they were that price at one point, but because of extreme bamboozling. But it's hard to not look at a first edition Monarch booster box, tongue twister, at like $65 and not be like, is that not extremely underpriced? Like, even just to crack it open and flip singles. I'll tell you funny enough, and this is like my long-term game with Flesh and Blood. You want to know I have the most of in Flesh and Blood is Everfest cases and boxes and cold foils. Everfest, I was getting boxes for like $45 a box. And there was like regular mythics in there that were selling for like $20, $25. And then you had like obviously like the legendaries and cold foils. So it was like the cold foils that were only selling for like $3, $4, I didn't sell those. So like I probably have like 20 sets of cold foils, probably more than that, of the Everfest. And tons of mythics. Like I have binders full of Everfest. And with them destroying the unlimited print run, I personally thought that Everfest, with how playable the cards were, that in the super long run, those boxes, because of how much they were being opened, would age well. To give you an idea, I was buying cases at like $140, $150 a case. So I think Everfest, personally, that's kind of like my little like secret play there, is like I think Everfest long term is a really good play. But also, like, I think, like I've also said it before, I think Crucible of War and Arcane Rising Unlimited, even Crucible of War first edition boxes, I think they're still only around like $300 or $400. Those might be a play, but I think the real play still is the unlimited boxes for like the 75. And the Arcane War or whatever is at like Arcane Rising's at like 108 now. But those boxes when they were like 90, those were a steal, I think. So I think in the next year, we're gonna see some crazy movement on older Flesh and Blood boxes. And I'm starting to maybe think about Uprising as well too. Like, are we gonna maybe start seeing some movement on those boxes? I think what it is with Flesh and Blood, with how much of a player's thing it is it really is about the singles. But the thing is, and like I've said before, right? Like how good it is to crack Flesh and Blood boxes. That just means so many more of them are being opened and they're not being hoarded. They're not being kept. So I think, in theory then, right, in the long term, these boxes are good holds. And something I want to stress to people that maybe, like, again, are like players watching this, and all they think about is like the singles prices, and they're like, oh, well, you know, they print new stuff and they'll go out of meta, so like no one's gonna really buy those old boxes, the box is the collectible, right? Some people, like, to give you an idea, and you can think that this is just then like a Ponzi, right? But like, if you opened a first edition booster box, if you opened any old Magic box or any old Pokemon box, maybe not so for Magic, because if you hit like a Black Lotus or something, but like the old Pokemon products, even a first edition base set booster box, you would need to hit like 2 Charizards and get them both like PSA 10s to like break even or make a little bit of money on a first edition booster box. And I think it's hard for players to understand that, like, just the box itself and how limited the box is, and it as like a collectible piece, like the box is the collectible, right? So with how much Everfest is being opened and everything, and then destroying the unlimited print run, in 5-10 years from now, the box itself or the case itself will be the collectible, right? So that's something we gotta, like, you know, think about. It's hard for players to think about that yes, the cards in there may not equal to the price that it's coming to, but it's because the sealed box itself, like, you can't reseal a box. Like, the box is the collectible. So that's kind of like a hard thing for players, I think, to kind of like wrap their head around. But that was it. Really, guys, simple video. Flesh and Blood, they're doing great. I think they're doing a good job managing the, you know, it's an ecosystem, right? You got players, investors, collectibles, and you need an ecosystem. You can't just cater towards one. It won't thrive. It won't exist. And I think they've kind of, they're figuring it out, right? They've made it 5 years, and as far as I'm aware, I mean, besides like Sorcery's not been around that long, but I think they're killing it. But besides like, not including Sorcery, I think Flesh and Blood so far is, in my opinion, has been one of the best kind of up and coming TCGs. I don't really count One Piece because that's like Bandai, right? It's a known entity. The thing I'll leave you on, and maybe someone can tell me, and maybe they know, they need to make a Flesh and Blood anime. They need to harness the power of the weeb and the waifu, and the money it generates. And like I was talking about in my older videos, or like the last couple of videos, and how Magic's IP isn't strong enough, and how they have to bring in these other things, and it's becoming monopoly. I want Flesh and Blood to really have a strong IP, and I think they can capitalize on that. They need to make an anime. They need to make some other form of media to get that. So make a Flesh and Blood anime with big waifus. So that's what I'll leave you with. Have a good one, guys.